Hello, everyone, and welcome to ImRecruitable TV, bringing you unfiltered, no BS information and advice on college sports recruiting. I'm your host, Tarek Merchant, and along with me is my sidekick, Jon Sklenar.
The usual. Hope everyone's doing well.
So today is episode 5, everyone. We've got a brand new intro, which I thought was pretty good, done by our design intern, Andrew. Shout out to Andrew. Good job there, buddy.
Getting a little excited there. You know, got some good beats in the background.
I know, right? I want to get out there. So COVID is still around, unfortunately, but I think progress is happening, especially in the college recruiting world. You know, had some calls this morning with some coaches, and looks like kids are going back to school, so that's a plus. And hopefully we can get back to normal sooner than later.
That's correct.
So, all right.
Get into it.
Yep. Episode 5, how player development impacts recruiting. This topic for me doesn't get talked about often enough. And when people come into the recruiting world, they don't realize how the two are correlated. So what we want to talk about is the connection between development and recruiting and how closely they are connected. We want to talk about getting serious about development and how that's such an important role and needs to be looked at every day, all day as you play your sport and want to be a college athlete. And then educating yourself on the college sports level so you know while you're developing your game and your skill set that you actually have what it takes to become a collegiate athlete.
Okay, I'm just gonna jump in here, but
Sure.
why do you think it's not talked about a lot?
Well, I think that it's a good question because I think there's 2 reasons. People don't understand how closely they do connect and correlate with each other,
right?
And they forget that. Like at this other same time, I think that people try to deter from development and then talking about recruiting early on because they don't know what's going to happen, and that's all understood. But it's like you have to talk about the things that are uncomfortable or not yet determined, and the things that nobody wants to. Let's say you're talking about you're developing and you're in grade 9 or 10, and somebody's telling you you could probably play D2, you could play D3. I mean, and your goal is to play D1 and you want to be a pro. So people tend to shy away from it. But
right.
When really you have to evaluate yourself every level of the way.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, so let's get into it with connection between development and recruiting. And so, you have to understand the details, right? So it's as simple as this. This is a correlation. The better player you are, the more opportunities you'll have, right? So if and we need to talk about it in probably the easiest way, which is a star rating, because a lot of sports use stars: 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star, 5 star. Some sports even go as high as blue chips. You remember that movie Blue Chips with Shaq and
right.
Was it Nick Nolte and stuff
Yeah.
back in the 90s? I actually rewatched that movie not long ago on Amazon Prime because I hadn't seen it in years, so it just came to my head. But that's the concept, right? Is that in sports, you have your stars and your stats, and that helps you determine the level that you're at. Now, saying that you're not that star level and all this, I don't want to get into people's reasonings. I just want to talk about how the connection happens. So, there are schools that recruit 5 stars. There are schools that recruit 4 stars, 3 stars, 2 stars, 1, and sometimes they recruit a mix of level players. Right. And if you want to get all the opportunities, then you're going to hopefully become a 5-star. And then you've got 5-star options all the way down to coaches that recruit players that are 1 stars.
Right.
That's the ultimate goal, right? I mean, it sounds like it's simple. It sounds like it's common sense, but really I think it needs to be brought up more often and explained, because I don't think everyone always sees it that way. So now the next thing about the stars is not everybody is going to become a 5-star player. Right. To become a 5-star player, it's basically like saying, I'm going to make $400,000 or more in the United States, which if you look at statistics over the years, earning $400,000 or more is like the 1% of earners in the United States. So a very small percentage within, in a large country of 350 million plus people.
A lot of people don't realize that either. So it's a good stat.
Exactly. People don't realize that. They don't realize how difficult it is and how few people actually get there. And that's not to discredit anybody else. So that's the same way with college sports. It requires talent, it requires desire, it requires opportunities. There's so many things that go into becoming a 5-star recruit. And to realize that everyone's striving to be that, but very few will actually make it there. And you need to be okay with falling anywhere in line between 1 and 5 stars. But where it gets complicated is people don't take their development to that level, so they don't plan for that. They don't understand that, okay, I need to actually get serious, put in the work, and all the things we're going to talk about. But that's the preface that I wanted to put forth, which is understanding that there's levels, understanding that it relates to each other, and that the better player you are, the better opportunities you're going to have, the more opportunities you're going to have. And most players don't get to the 5-star, like I said, but if you can fall somewhere there will be opportunities. You will have a great, college experience, and but you are, fighting for a spot.
Right. One of the things I can throw in here, Tarek, is like with the development, is it also has a lot to do with understanding the recruiting timeframes.
Right.
Okay. Although a coach might like your play and you may be on a short list of prospects for their program, so depending on where you are in the recruiting season or the cycle or time frame, your next steps and coaching timeline might look very different, right?
Yeah.
So you got to make sure you know what level you need to get to during your recruiting time frame, because it could be too late. So it's always good to start early. At least you have the advantage of knowing where you need to get to.
Right. So that's another part of this development and recruiting, is that there's pre-recruiting development, where just because so another thing I can add is that when you asked me the question at the beginning,
right,
of why people don't talk about it, I think that they only start also thinking about it when recruiting happens. So let's say you're a junior, right? And you start that communication with coaches, and you're let's just say you're a 3-star, for example, and a certain level player and certain attributes. And the coach says, I'm really looking for what they might call a 4-star, or someone closer to a 4-star, and they need to have these skill sets and these, stats and so on. Then they start thinking about, okay, how do I get there development-wise? When really they should have been thinking about it from the beginning. So when you talk about recruiting timeline, it's recruiting with coaches. It's during the recruitment, like you said, a coach might be interested in you, but is expecting that. Now, if you have all of that going on, then you should be telling a coach like, oh, that's already in my plan. Like, I'm working towards what you're asking me to do. So it's not new to me, but I'm going to try my best to get there, and hopefully I can and become a member of your team.
Right.
Not, oh, now let's go do it, which ends up being the case so many times. And then all of a sudden everything's rushed. And can you imagine the pressure that the parent puts on the kid, that the kid has from the parents, let alone the pressure that coaches have to actually make that happen in, let's say, a short period of time? It's just a disaster waiting to happen.
Just gives them more time, right? Coaches that have, players on their radar will more likely recruit them if they see, certain development and improvement, right? So that's why at earlier ages, coaches like to get these recruits on their radar, and they will follow them.
Yeah.
Okay. They'll communicate with them when they're able to. Again, going back to, if you have a profile with a platform, they can at least follow you there, see what type of recruiting videos you're putting up every year, and just watching your development and improvement, right?
Yeah. So that's exactly like what goes hand in hand with everything we just said, is because you make a great point there, is that, so I said that you need to look at, your development and have that already in place. So when a coach tells you, I need this, that you're like, yeah, I'm already on top of it. But you're even saying one step further, which is like you actually even, you're showing those improvements along the way. So coach will get even more interested to being like, and understanding that you are developing your skill set.
Yeah, because during the recruiting process, right, a college coach is ultimately looking for a player they're going to have on their team for 4 years, right? So they're looking for the full package player. Now, while a college coach is watching, recruits play at camps, tournaments, or showcases, they're also looking for what type of player they're going to eventually become, right? So again, working into the development aspect, they're seeing if this, player is able to develop, if they are developing, if they're able to improve, because ultimately, they're not trying to bring someone on their team that is just going to be at a standstill. They want them to continue to develop, continue to improve, and to leave after 4 years with, something gained out of it, whether, they're going to the next level or just in general, just being a better player coming out of college.
Yeah, a lot of coaches will ask athletes, what their goals are as far as, what they want to achieve. And that is 100% basically asking you about development, and they're looking to develop you. And, people forget that when you come in and you're not a 5-star, then everyone's looking to make you a 5-star, right? Or whatever, have you jump up. And a lot of teams that are recruiting what they call the developing players, those are your 1-stars, 2-stars, and 3-stars that still need more work and have a lot of growth for development. That you can especially see. They are looking for those players that want to continue their development. And there's so many success stories that I hear from coaches who say, I took on this 2-star kid, but boy, did he or she have a ton of talent and a ton of great, work ethic and all this. And you know what? After junior year, coming into senior year, like he or she was a starter and they did this and they did that and they were winning all these awards and became a 4-star recruit, type of player, 5-star player. It's like that happens,
right?
In every sport, and we see it. And so development is important all the way through, like you said. Okay, so let's talk about getting serious about development, which is the next area of discussion here. It's, it's not something you can take lightly, right, John?
No, I mean, player development is a long-term process, and it should be started as early as possible, like we keep mentioning, if you're taking your sport seriously, right? So, starting early, grade 8, going into high school is the main focus for wanting to play college sports. So starting early.
Yeah. So I think, people will ask the question to me often, and I see it around is, people take their sport seriously at different times. I can talk about my experience, which is, I played ice hockey, baseball, soccer, tennis, all competitively, and especially baseball and hockey. But then, I dropped those around grade 9, going into grade 10. And I had to make the decision for a couple reasons. One is like the amount of time that it obviously takes. Everyone knows if they play those sports, the travel is intense. You know all about hockey, John. You did it for so long. So the travel's intense. You can't possibly, put all your energy and efforts towards one thing and really get the maximum development, out of your game if you don't start focusing somewhere, especially if you want to get to the college level. And this is back in the 90s, right? So like now you're talking about in early 2000s, and now you're talking about 2020, and players are specializing and they're spending more time, and it's just the market, it's the reality. There's so much more in competition that I believe players even need to start earlier and start specializing. And obviously that doesn't mean you can't play other sports, because I still played those other sports recreationally in leagues and whatever I wanted to do, but I couldn't do it on a competitive aspect. And still I was kind of late in some regards. So, if a kid loves their sport, if for parents that are listening, like if the kid loves the sport, they want to be out there all day long, then, they're serious about it. And, you have to take it seriously because you never know what's going to happen. So you have two choices. You can either start taking it seriously from the beginning, or you can take it serious later on, and but taking it seriously from the beginning and then the kid not wanting to do it anymore, that's okay. Just you drop it at that point.
Yeah, if you know your path, right? So for me, I was, how, big I was in hockey and, playing competitive hockey at the highest level. And then, I took up tennis at a later age, but I kind of found my path, probably like around grade 10, like you're saying as well, which, was a little late, but again, the recruiting process was different back then. I kind of just found my path and I chose tennis, and I kind of knew like I was able to, excel in tennis. Maybe my tennis game wasn't as strong 2 years before, and, I was, MVP hockey player, but then, after a couple of years, I continued to play tennis, continued to train. And then, I saw where my level was, and I knew that, tennis was going to help me get into college and play at a higher level. Now, you should never, you always need to maximize your development. Okay. Also at an earlier age, always aim for the stars. College sports are competitive, so daily training and competition is of the highest quality. So you always have to, again, if you know that you're going to stick to a certain sport, you're trying to get to the college level, you just got to keep, going at it and just, trying to reach the highest level. But it takes a lot of time and effort, training, competition, for all that to be a success.
Yeah, I think people just think too deeply about the seriousness. So like you said, you found your way, grade 10, similar to me. I found my way around that time. We played other sports. We didn't drop the other sports completely. I dropped the competitive play, being on some of those higher travel teams, but
Right.
It's because you can't do it all, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
that was just a reality of my situation. And so that was tough decisions to make and
Plus you're in
stuff
school,
like that.
right?
But yeah, but I think I took all sports personally serious from day one, from when I did it, because I just loved sports. Like I
Right.
remember when I first started, my dad put me in skating at age 3. I won my first skating badge at the age of 3. I took it seriously, I think, even as a kid, because I loved it, right? I just absolutely loved it. And I did everything I could with sports. And my parents recognized that. And when they saw that I just didn't want to leave the soccer field or the hockey, games, and I was super excited, I couldn't even sleep. I mean, everything about my life was sports, sports, sports. Even the video games that I'm playing, I only wanted sports games. I only wanted to watch sports on TV. So it's like, if that's how the kid is, then, they're serious about it, then you got to take it seriously.
Well, let me ask you this. I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later or soon, but did you know, you were so involved in all your sports, you might have had a favorite sport, but did you know around the, going into high school, kind of where your sport might be able to take you, like after high school, like college, pro, semi-pro, or did you have any of that in mind, or you were just, going along with the punches?
Yeah, at around like 12 years old for me, I told my parents that I wanted to go play college sports.
Okay.
And it was basically for me, like I used to go to California all the time to visit my cousins, and I would go, and my cousin actually was being coached at the time. They had a tennis court at their house. And so a girl from the UCLA team used to come and play with them, and then I would go play, and she's like, "Oh, you're pretty good." And we'd have a lot of fun. And she'd tell me about her experience as a player, as well as we would go to some football games and different things. So I got a glimpse of all of that. And I thought, because I love sports, like I said, I was always about sports. I'm like, I got to be an athlete here. And then around 15, grade 9, grade 10, I started to realize, okay, I want to be a college tennis player. And it's funny because even in my going away party, a surprise party that my parents and sisters threw for me, that's what I think it was my mom wrote in the card. I still have it. I got to find it. But someone wrote in there saying, this was your dream. This is what you wanted to do. And I'm so happy and proud that, it could happen. And I even wrote it in an article. There's an article that I had in the summer of grade 9 going into grade 10, where I won some big, big tournaments that I had someone interview me. And the guy said, well, what do you want to do? And I wrote, I want to play college tennis. That is my goal. That's my dream. And so, and I think it happens differently for everybody, right? Like some people might not even know till senior year. But my point was really, whether you know it or you don't, if you love what you're doing at the moment, take it seriously, because it doesn't hurt you to not. Don't say, I'll take it seriously when this happens. And I feel like a lot of parents give those excuses to,
Yeah.
too often. It's like, oh, well, we're trying to figure out, I'm not sure, I don't want to invest this, I don't want to do that. No one's asking you to go and invest, $1 million into,
No.
someone's development. But I'm saying take it seriously, because even if you go out and, throw the ball around with your friend and you're working on pitching, or you're working on, if you're a quarterback and you're working on accuracy, whatever it is, like go in there with the mindset that, like you said, is I'm going to give it my all.
Well, taking it serious also, it opens up more opportunities, right? So just because you might know, what level you are at for certain schools, you should never stop trying to get to the next level, because your scholarship options will always open up. So, you might be in grade 11 or 12, and, you might just think you're going to plateau yourself and be like, okay, I know I can get into like these 5 schools that I'm interested in. So, might not take it as serious anymore. You already think you can get in there. But, if you keep developing your game, no matter what sport, you just never know. You can just jump from that one level to the next level, whether it's, being a D2 player right into being a D1 player, or, being that 3-star, making that leap to being a 4-star, close to a 5. And then, your schools can just open up, your opportunities can open up, and you'll have more options.
Yeah, I think that it comes down to the desire, of that athlete. How badly do they want it? And if you look at the best athletes in the world, the ones that are always in front of our faces, you look at the Kobe Bryants and the LeBron James and the Jordans, because we saw that documentary recently.
Right.
If people haven't watched, that, then, I think you start seeing, even Tiger Woods, Federer, all these guys, like in different sports, you just realize how badly they want it and how they never stop developing their skills. And that even when they're won multiple titles and championships and Super Bowls and whatever it is, they're hungry for more, because they know that someone's knocking on their door. At the same time, it doesn't matter how far someone is behind them. They just want to keep being the best athlete they can be and reaching new heights and reaching new, achievements. They don't get complacent, and they are happy with to do it. They're willing to do it. So you're right. I mean, and I have to make the point, because this is no filter, no BS, is there are people like, and I'll give my example, where I never wanted to be a pro tennis player.
Right.
I don't know why. I think, if I'm being truthful to myself, I think it's because I didn't love tennis the way I loved soccer, baseball, and ice hockey. And I'll be honest about that. I love all sports so much that I could play tennis, but those were my 3 sports that I did like more than tennis. But I was happy achieving. I worked hard, but I was not, I was self-aware to know that I wasn't trying to get to, I wanted to get to a good level. I really worked hard, but it wasn't the pro, route for me.
Right.
So there was a point where I wasn't going to sacrifice my social life or certain experiences in high school and college for my sports. While you watch other athletes do that and talk about how they didn't have a social life, that they never went to their prom, that they didn't do certain things. And that, what I'm trying to say is that's all okay.
Right.
But there is a certain level you need to get to make the college goal a reality. That was something I was very self-aware about. And I definitely put in the work to get there.
Well, same here. I mean, at the time when I was getting, thinking about, I'm going to go play college tennis myself, during that summer before my senior year, before my junior year, I don't think I had a life, actually. I was on the tennis courts from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. because I kind of new
Well, don't get me wrong.
level.
I was sacrificed a ton too. I just meant,
Yeah.
it comes in variations.
Yeah. So I lived at the tennis courts actually that summer, but it actually, my level just skipped to, potentially maybe looking at some options to, okay, yeah, you're definitely college tennis material, and you can go after those scholarships, and you still have time too. So
Yeah. I mean, we weren't trying to go play, for tennis at Stanford, which was like probably the top team at the time, or one of the
right.
top teams, because we were like, okay, we're not Stanford. And nor did I really, sure, I would have loved to play for Stanford, but nor did I really expect that or think that based on what I was doing with it. But, it doesn't, I think the message that I want to make clear is that it's not that, like, I definitely took it serious too. Like, I lived at the courts in the summers as well, but there are some people that there's those slight differences where they skip the prom, they skip certain activities,
Right.
they don't do anything on the weekends. And that's like maybe the kid that wants to be the next, in our sport, Roger Federer, the next, Peyton Manning or whatever it is. It's just, it's serious and there's development, but you have to at least understand that. So I want to bring one more point about this topic up that I believe for parents is extremely important. And that's, well, it's for parents and athletes. Don't blame your coach on your development because they are not in charge. Like, they are not you. You have your own dreams. You have your own, you're your own person. Okay. You determine how hard or not hard you want to work. You are the only one that truly knows how much effort you put in, and as you gave it your all every day, and if you were focused, and if you were disciplined, and if you went home and you ate healthy and you did all the right stuff, you slept, and you took care of yourself. And I think a lot of people start blaming their coaches, and parents start blaming coaches as well because of their development. Like, they're expecting them to develop their game for them, when in reality, they're there to guide them and coach them. They're not there to, they can bring a horse to the water, but you can't force them to drink. And the other aspect of this, don't blame your coach, and development on the parent side is that, ultimately you're the CEO, you're the operations person of your child. You need to look at the place where they're going to train. You're, as a family, need to, and you could do this with coach as well, put some short and long-term goals in place. The child needs to go out there and try to achieve them, and the parent needs to be the project manager, basically saying, okay, were we able to get these results?
Right.
Why or why not? Did you do what you were supposed to do? Did the coach do what they were supposed to do? Did I, as a parent, do what I needed to do? And so if that didn't happen, then we need to adjust and make improvements and go on. And we need to assess that very often, not waiting 6 months, 1 year and saying, oh, well, we didn't get where we wanted to get, or we didn't even make the right strides to get there. Because when you do that, then you start blaming others, and then you start getting frustrated, and then you start wondering why you're not getting the opportunities that you believe you should be getting. But it's because you haven't actually broken it down and assessed it. And I think it's the parents' role and their main job to make sure they manage that development. Encourage, don't coach, let the coaches coach. And if they're not doing the right job, then you have to find the right chemistry with the right team and the right people. But you have to make sure that you evaluate it and see the results. And if you do that, then you can hold everyone accountable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense to me.
And that's another thing that rarely gets done. And to be honest, I see a lot of parents say, yeah, to me, if I bring it up in a seminar or a speech or in videos like this, and, they don't actually follow through. Like,
Right.
I really want parents to understand, like, you have to do this if you want to help your child. My parents did that. My parents definitely were on top of what was happening with my development. They would show up to practice from time to time. They made sure I had the coaches that would help me improve, and they would ask me questions, and we would set goals. and like, hey, like I remember sitting down distinctively with my father and talking about, breaking the top 20, in the Canadian rankings. And that happened in the summer of my, grade 9 going to grade 10 year. And it wasn't just, let's do this. It's like, how? Make sure the coach is on board. And, you don't have to be an expert at all. You don't have to know your sport. In fact, it's better if you don't. My parents knew very little to nothing about any of the sports that I played, especially when it came to playing at the competitive level and the high performance level. But they were just good at making sure things were happening, asking the right questions, making sure everyone was on top of stuff, and explaining to me that if you do X, Y, and Z, you will see improvements. It's no different than, for example, I used to go play piano with my sisters, right? And we'd go to piano classes. Well, my teacher said, Tarek, you got to practice piano half an hour a day. I hated piano, by the way. Sorry, Miss Milan, my old teacher. I loved her. But she was a huge Leafs fan, by the way. So we talk hockey all the time. But I didn't like it, but I knew I needed to do it. My parents would come home and be like, when I would go to do the tests, and sometimes I would barely pass, they'd be like, so how do you expect to pass this test? You don't practice 30 minutes a day. You don't do the homework assignments. You don't, I followed up with your teacher. So how do you expect to make this happen? And then it was kind of like, yeah, you're right. For me, it became a conversation eventually, like, I actually don't like this. That's why I don't do it. But, otherwise, they didn't have to know how to play the piano to manage this process.
Right.
So I just want to hammer that home because, I get a lot of those excuses sometimes. I don't know anything about the sport. You don't need to know one thing about the sport. All right. Moving on to educate yourself on college sports levels. This is now the important piece of everything we've talked about.
Yeah, well, you kind of brushed on it a little bit there, Tarek, with your top 20 in Canada,
Yeah.
So kind of going into knowing what it takes to get to a certain level of competition. So if you want to be at a top 20 D1 school, then you better train for it. You got to work hard. You got to kind of do your research in that aspect and kind of know what it takes to get to that level. You can't just be doing what you're doing because you might not get to that next level. You have to do other things. You have to go above and beyond. You have to put in those hours, like me, when I didn't have a life during the summer, instead of being on the tennis courts for 2 hours, I was on the tennis courts for 6 hours, obviously given the fact that I was able to do so. But, you have to understand what it takes to get to certain levels.
Okay, so John, I want to ask you then, people will often say, I don't know what, the levels are in college, for my sport. So, what's the minimum level I need to get to even become a college athlete, as well as if I want to play at the top teams. So for me, like, it was talking to past players or seeing players like that would come home in the summertime and stuff that were, playing in college and asking them, what college you go to, what's it like, all that stuff. I never got to go to college matches and stuff like that. But I think that now with, obviously COVID, meaning not now, but when people hopefully watch this and this is over, normally going to college matches is a good way to see, how good these teams are and these players, right?
Yeah, you can talk to, people in your sport, on your team, teammates, coaches. You can get a lot of information. Going to matches obviously helps out, but kind of just doing your research, you can, find a lot of stuff online. There's a point in your life or, where you're going to kind of already know where, like if you're playing a house league, sport or whatever, you might know, like you're not playing at a competitive level, right?
Right.
You're already at a competitive level. Like you have to kind of be at a competitive level to play college sports, unless if you just have like a talent and you can just, pick up a bat and start hitting home runs. Okay. Right. But other than that, if you're not like, that type of talent, like you already know that you're playing on a competitive team or you're playing competitive tournaments, you're going to be around, competitive parents, coaches, and players. So, just ask, ask the older kids, where they're committing to, it kind of gives you an idea. Like I knew, again, I know I talked about this on another show, but the way I found out where, I can kind of fit into some of these schools is I asked someone that was, a year ahead of me that already committed somewhere and that got a bunch of letters from these schools. He was a little bit better than me, but I kind of knew like, okay, this could be like the chunk of schools that I might be able to get into, get offered some scholarships. So I kind of went after these caliber of coaches during, leading up to my senior year. But I knew that was the level I was at, and these are the type of schools that I can actually go after. So I didn't go after, your Stanfords, your Dukes, your UCLAs, whatever the case was, as much as I would love to go to these schools. I just knew at that time already, I did my research. I knew I wasn't at that level.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. I think also when you said it online, like you can see what type of stats these guys and girls are putting up.
Right.
You can see the scoreboard, the results, and stats don't lie. Like if you're putting up these numbers, and like you said, if you're playing in these competitive leagues, you'll get a good idea. And a lot of the coaches too are former athletes, right? Either pro and college or both, and they can help. The one thing you got to be careful of is different eras will have different levels, right? Like I know, when we went to school, it's natural that the athletes are bigger, stronger. They have better equipment. They have better technology now. So it's hard to compare eras, but people do, people who know it understand how that works. Like maybe not. I'm not sure. Maybe we could have played at the same schools we did and had the same success in today's era than we did because, we would have also had those new equipment and technologies and all that behind us. But it's hard to tell. So you got to also be careful. You got to.
Well, those things are super useful, like having platforms, like ImRecruitable, when coaches are hitting you up on there, when they're contacting you, it's like you're going to be at their level. Their coaches like do their research as well. Coaches aren't trying to go for a super high reach. If they're, looking at, 2-3 star players, they're not going for your blue chips, and vice versa. Sense. If you're a school like a Duke, they're not going after 3-star players. So they're going after like the elite, right? So it's kind of comes hand in hand. The way coaches do it is also how, you should be doing it as well. And kind of, again, doing your research and knowing that if you're a certain level, kind of find out exactly which level you should be going after rather than reaching for the stars, I guess, and kind of not getting much success there.
Yeah, it was my biggest feature, or I always talk about the coaches will recruit the level players that they want, and you will start to understand where you fit in the market.
Sorry, let me just retract, because I always say reach for the stars, but when you're at a later stage in the recruiting and you're trying to go after these schools now, that's when you should already be well prepared and kind of know you're at a certain level, right? So if you're going into like your junior year or halfway through your junior year, it takes a lot to just jump to the next level just within 6 months, and going from like a 3-star school to like a school that is trying to look for some like blue chips or 5 stars, right?
Yeah, I mean, there comes a time in your development when you have to take an opportunity based on where you're at right now.
Exactly.
And you continue development once you get to that place. No different than a job.
No.
You have a certain skill set. You might want a job at Google, but you end up getting a job at another tech company.
Right.
And you take it because that's where you're at now. And while you're at that job, you might spend 1, 2, 3, 4, 5+ years building the skills, and then maybe the next opportunity comes from there.
And this is why it's important to start early as well, right? So like the earlier start you have and the earlier you do your research, the more you'll understand and kind of know what to do to get to a certain level, rather than, waiting till like last minute and being like, oh, okay, like I want to go here actually, but I'm going to have to there's a lot of development and a lot of improvement for me to actually, even contact a coach of that level. So yeah.
And so the whole market is important. Understanding where you fit in the market of college coaches. That is, as you touched on earlier, that's why I added that feature in ImRecruitable. I think that's a key component is, if coaches come and view your profile, provided you have the information there and you show your videos and all your skill sets and development, then the types of coaches that are interested in getting a player like you will start hitting you up. You'll very quickly see who's viewing profiles, who's searching you, who's following you, to get an understanding of where you fit. So, it's not only going to college matches, not only talking to people, it's also seeing those stats online and through these platforms that can give you direct access to these coaches for them to tell you, like, this is where I think you are and I'm interested or I'm not interested. And obviously you have to reach out as well. It's very important to run it both ways and to see what the reaction comes back. Right. So, that's it for me on this, because I think that we've given a lot of great information on how players can develop and continue to, improve not only before, during recruitment, but after recruitment, how it all interconnects with each other, how important it is that, and setting the expectations. You don't expect to send an email to some of these top schools that everyone's desiring to go, but you've neglected the development and understanding of that those coaches are going to recruit, the best players they can. And so my final thing to say is, if you have done everything in your power, you have everything we talked about today, and you have put in your work and you have tried to maximize your potential, you have done everything you could to make that happen. And wherever you fit and fall, whether it's a 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, you should be very, very happy and proud of what you've been able to accomplish, and realize that there's an opportunity for you at one or more schools to play your sport in college, that it's an amazing opportunity, that it's the best time of your life. You don't have to go to the top schools to have that experience. There's offered all the way across. Otherwise, people wouldn't go, right? And so you have to be happy with that. But where people aren't is when they have regret and when they wish they had done it earlier. So I'm hoping that, parents of 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders, do your research. Yeah. I'm hoping that everybody, listens to this early on, and that the people that are listening to it later are actually telling everybody who's younger, like, you need to focus on this. You need to listen to this. You need to realize how important it is to the development, to your recruitment, and that, when it comes time, you won't be disappointed.
Right.
All right. So that concludes episode 5. Very important topic, how player development impacts recruiting. Thanks for joining us, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Happy recruiting.